Morning light does a quiet thing to the soul. It softens the edges, slows the breath, and lets you hear the difference between hurry and hunger. Beneath the noise of tips, hacks, and urgent promises, there is a steadier question humming in your chest. What if wealth that lasts does not begin with money at all, but with the way your inner world is ordered? You have felt it, those late nights when the spreadsheet is open, the heart is racing, and your thoughts move faster than your body can settle. The calendar says you are working, yet your nervous system says you are bracing. It is not laziness. It is overload. It is not a lack of desire. It is a lack of alignment between the part of you that wants to build and the part that is always scanning for danger. When the two are at war, even good opportunities feel like threats. There is a quiet grief that comes with chasing wealth the hard way. The grief of starting and stopping, the grief of buying courses and never finishing them, the grief of a browser with too many tabs and a body with too little rest. You promise yourself that next month will be different, yet the same patterns return. A burst of intensity, then a dip, a new tactic, then a stall, a surge of motivation. Then the old fatigue. The brain is not your enemy. It is trying to keep you safe. But when cortisol writes the plan will always be short-term. When anxiety sets the timeline, every path looks like a cliff. The result is a life lived in micro-sprints and micro-panics, a rhythm that trains your reward circuits to love novelty more than results. If you hear yourself in this, breathe. There is no shame here. Only recognition. You are not late, not behind, not broken. You are simply ready to move from noise to wisdom, from bracing to building. This is where Solomon enters not as myth, but as method. He did not ask for wealth. He asked for understanding, for the judgment to steer a complex life with a clear mind and a steady heart. That choice reveals a map. Order inside first, order outside next. Practical spirituality at its best is not abstract. It trains perception, calms the body, and clarifies decisions. Emotional neuroscience offers the same gift in different language. When the prefrontal cortex is engaged and the body is regulated, you choose better, trade better, partner better, and endure longer. Wisdom becomes leverage because it reduces error, and reduced error compounds like interest. The sacred and the scientific shake hands here. A stilled heart sees farther. A stilled mind spends cleaner. A stilled body keeps promises to itself. Let the title name the doorway you are stepping through. Col Aki o titolo do video. 3. Solomon, Principles to Become a Millionaire. Proven. Proven not by a flash of luck, but by patterns that survive seasons. Proven not by hype, but by results that repeat. Proven not by the speed of the first win, but by the dignity of the 10th year. Millionaire here is not a lottery word, it is a stewardship word. It signals a threshold where your decisions echo beyond bills and into legacy, where your surplus funds not only your comfort, but your calling, where what you possess begins to protect who you love. The pursuit is not greed. The pursuit is order, because disorder is expensive and wisdom is efficient. Notice as you listen that your breath has already slowed a little. Notice the way your shoulders fall when you allow yourself to want durable wealth without apologizing for it. Desire is not the problem, direction is. The mind loves specifics, the body loves rhythm, your future loves decisions that respect both. So the path ahead refuses two common errors, chasing everything and changing nothing. Instead, it favors fewer moves executed with deeper understanding, fewer inputs arranged in reliable cycles, fewer voices filtered through counsel that has skin in the game. It sounds almost too simple until you feel what happens in your chest when a plan finally fits your nervous system. The mind clears, the jaw unclenches, the timeline stretches. You stop bargaining with the clock and begin to partner with compounding. Hold one image as the light changes across your room. A blueprint on a table, lines already measured, corners already squared, load-bearing choices already settled. The workers who arrive will still sweat, but they will not guess. That is what this moment offers you, the end of guessing, the end of improvising your financial life under pressure, the end of mistaking adrenaline for progress. In its place comes a way of working that respects your biology, your values, and your ambition at the same time. A way that feels honest in the body and intelligent in the mind, because it is both. A way that turns wealth from a chase into a craft, and prosperity from a mood into a structure you can stand inside. If you have carried a secret fear that you might never figure this out, let it loosen its grip as you prepare to build with wisdom before wealth, with rhythm before rush, with counsel before scale. Feel your attention gather, feel your focus return to you. The blueprint is on the table. Your hands are steady. Your next choice belongs to you. There is a moment when the hunger to fix your finances collides with a wall you cannot name. Energy is high, tabs are open, plans are sketched, yet the chest stays tight and the jaw keeps working. You move fast and feel slow. You buy another course and feel hopeful for a night, then the old fog returns. This is not failure. This is the nervous system trying to outrun uncertainty with motion. When fear and urgency sit in the driver's seat, even promising paths look unsafe. The mind starts scanning for exits. The heart starts negotiating with itself. Money feels near and far at the same time. A quieter pattern lives underneath the noise. The pattern begins with judgment. Not judgment that shames, judgment that discerns. The kind that sorts signals from static. Millionaires are not grown by luck, rushing in through a side door. They are grown by judgment that has been patiently trained to see what matters and to ignore what does not. The world calls this discipline. Solomon would call it wisdom. When wisdom sits at the center, opportunities are easier to evaluate. Some become gentle yes, most become clean no. The body relaxes. Decisions stop tasting like danger. You may remember seasons when you tried to buy speed, new tactics, new mentors, new platforms. Each one promised to erase doubt. Each one gave a short surge and a longer crash. The rhythm did not break because the spine of the plan was missing. The spine is not a hack. The spine is a way of perceiving. When perception matures, choices mature. When choices mature, time stops leaking. Emotional neuroscience speaks plainly here. A regulated body frees the prefrontal mind. The prefrontal mind improves pattern recognition. Better pattern recognition reduces error. Reduced error creates compounding. Suddenly, wealth is not an event. It is a slope. Picture a long wooden table with a single sheet spread flat across it. The lines are true. The angles hold. The weight of the structure has been calculated. In that room, the workers still sweat, but they do not guess. The blueprint came first. Revisiting this image matters because costly mistakes disappear when wisdom draws before money moves. You may still feel the tug of hurry. You may still hear the anthem of productivity singing through your feed. Yet something in you knows that 5 quiet minutes with the blueprint can save 5 loud months in the field. The body feels that difference. The body trusts that difference. Hidden pains begin to name themselves when you slow enough to see them. The cycle of starting and stopping, the longing to be consistent, and the shame that follows every stall. The way novelty steals attention and leaves behind regret. These are not character flaws. These are predictable outcomes when inner order lags behind outer ambition. Solomon's path turns the sequence around. Order within, order without. When the sequence is respected, cash flow becomes less dramatic and more dependable. Less spike, more steady, less rescue, more rhythm. What once felt like personal failure reveals itself as a wiring issue that can be soothed rather than punished. There is a simple ritual many builders discover when they step onto this path. Before the day gets loud, a quiet hour becomes a small sanctuary. Not hustling, not scrolling, not performing. Reading that stretches judgment. Practice that strengthens a chosen skill. Reflection that turns yesterday's friction into today's clarity. Some call it wisdom work. The name matters less than the feeling in the body when it is done. Shoulders soften, perception sharpens. The rest of the day stops demanding proof and starts following a lead. Over weeks, the mind begins to expect this hour. Over months, the hour begins to pay interest. Alongside that hour, another gentle practice begins to take shape. A page on the desk, a few lines each week, not a diary of emotions, a record of returns that wisdom produces, one insight that changed how you moved, one mistake you did not repeat, one process that works smoother than it used to, small entries, honest entries. Over time, the page becomes a mirror that shows you how far judgment has carried you. Doubt argues with data. The page holds the data. The page calms the noise. The page proves that wisdom compounds. As this chapter settles, notice how your body responds to the idea that wealth begins with inner order. There is less urgency and more gravity, less flinch and more focus. You may sense an old anxiety loosening at the edges because the path no longer depends on a perfect week or a perfect launch. It depends on perceiving more clearly and choosing more cleanly. It depends on a mind that knows what matters and a heart that no longer bargains away its peace. This is how a student becomes a sovereign, not with a crown won in a rush, with a blueprint unfolded at dawn and a life built line by line until the walls stand straight and the roof keeps its promise. There is a certain fatigue that never looks tired on the outside. The calendar is full, the to-do list is generous, the coffee is strong, yet the mind keeps bouncing between tabs and the day keeps slipping through small cracks. A burst of effort brings a spike of hope, then the body sags and the week ends with the same unfinished promises. The cycle repeats and calls itself busy. Underneath the surface, a harsher truth quietly forms. Work done in scattered gusts cannot carry the weight of a real dream. It lifts for a moment and drops when the wind changes. That drop is what hurts, not the work, the drop. The pattern has a familiar camouflage. It often looks like research. It wears the clothes of preparation. It scrolls inspiring quotes and calls it planning. It feels safe because it postpones exposure and postpones decisions. The nervous system relaxes for a short while and then tightens when deadlines move close enough to breathe on the skin. The mind sprints to catch up. The body braces. The whole week becomes a series of recoveries rather than a clean arc. Emotional neuroscience has simple language for this. The brain that is always negotiating threats cannot build reliable rhythm. Rhythm needs a calmer signal. Rhythm needs the same song repeated until the body learns the steps. Diligence begins to change shape when it stops pretending to be heroism. It stops chasing heavy days and begins to arrange honest ones. It turns away from dramatic sprints and leans into a set of small motions that happen at the same time in the same way for longer than the mood lasts. Those motions do not ask for applause. They ask for placement. They ask for a home in the day. Once placed, they begin to hum inside the nervous system like a quiet metronome. A few high-leverage moves early, a few small refinements later, inputs recorded as they happen, outputs reviewed at a gentle end of the week. Nothing glamorous, deeply effective. Sporadic effort breeds sporadic income. The graph rises like a shout and falls like a sigh. The heart feels that volatility and starts to fear its own ambition. Predictable effort breeds predictable surplus. The graph becomes less dramatic and more trustworthy. A steady mind can walk across that line without looking down. This is what diligence as a system gives a builder. It gives a day that repeats kindly. It gives a plan that keeps working when inspiration takes a day off. It gives a body that knows what is coming and therefore stops burning sugar just to stay alert. It saves energy for the work that makes a dent. Imagine a narrow path worn into the earth by countless small feet. An ant does not carry the harvest in one trip. It carries a seed, then another, until winter itself begins to make room. The strength is not in the size of any single load. The strength is in the repetition. The path deepens. The colony survives. The lesson lands in the chest with a warm kind of logic. Small and steady is not romantic. Small and steady is regal. Small and steady is how quiet power learns to move. Inside this rhythm, the day becomes easier to predict. Morning has its sturdy moves. Afternoon has its careful refinements. Evening offers a simple accounting. What went in, what came out. The nervous system learns that nothing terrifying is hidden in the hours. Safety returns. With safety comes focus. With focus comes craft. The prefrontal mind loves this peace. It begins to see patterns that were blurred by exhaustion. It begins to notice which actions actually move revenue and which actions are only theater. It begins to choose with less noise and more truth. Over time, consistency changes the shape of money. Spikes soften. Dips shorten. The average rises in a way that is hard to notice until a month closes and the numbers tell a calmer story. Margin responds as chaos fades. Fewer fires mean fewer expensive reactions. Fewer reversals mean fewer wasted campaigns. The same effort that once scattered across 10 ideas now strengthens one strong channel and feeds a second one with overflow. The work feels lighter because lost motion is leaving the system. The body knows this relief. The shoulders lower without asking permission. There is another quiet gift buried in steady diligence. Confidence without theater. When a rhythm has been honored for weeks, identity shifts from "I hope I can" to "this is what I do." That sentence lives deeper than motivation. It lives in muscle memory. It lives in how the chair feels when you sit down at the same hour. It lives in how the brain warms up faster because it recognizes the task and stops fighting the start. This is not a mood. This is a pathway. Neurons that fired together yesterday fire together again today. That is not poetry. That is architecture. A strange kindness appears as well. The day stops punishing itself for being imperfect. Rhythm does not require perfection. Rhythm requires return. A missed beat does not end the song. It simply asks for the next beat. That one comes. The song continues. The shame that used to cost half a week loses its budget. Recovery is quicker because identity is not on trial every afternoon. Capacity grows because attention is no longer bleeding out through tiny self-accusers. The work gets more honest. The hours get more human. Hold the image of that narrow path and the small, steady feet moving along it. Not frantic, not loud, certain. The mind that once demanded drama now begins to enjoy evidence. The evidence says that steady inputs measured each day and steady reviews measured each week reshape outcomes in ways adrenaline never could. It says that cash flow becomes less frightened when the builder becomes less frantic. It says that a kingly result is rarely the child of a chaotic routine. It is the child of a simple system that refuses to quit on itself. Ant-level consistency, king-level results. The words feel almost too plain until you hear what happens inside your body when they land. Breath slows, eyes soften, pressure drops without losing power. The promise is modest and immense at the same time. Do less. Repeat more. Choose a few moves that matter and let them become the bones of each day. In that simplicity, a different kind of wealth begins to rise. Not a flash, a foundation, not a sprint, a sovereignty that does not need to announce itself to be real. There is a particular silence that follows a hard decision when you face it alone. The room is still, the cursor blinks, and the mind rehearses every possible future while the body carries the weight of choosing without a witness. Pride calls that weight noble. Fatigue calls it heavy. Somewhere between those voices, a truth waits quietly. The lone path is costly, not only in money, in energy, in time, in the small cracks it makes in confidence each time a guess goes wrong. Blind spots do not announce themselves. They feel like certainty. They sound like logic. They wear the familiar clothes of past experience and persuade the heart that the map is complete. Then a missed clause in a contract becomes an expensive detour. Then a tax rule you never heard of takes a bite you did not budget for. Then a promising hire turns into months of repair. None of this signals failure of character. It signals the limit of one set of eyes traveling through a complex terrain. Counsel alters this physics. Paying for perspective is often cheaper than paying for error. Wisdom framed as an invoice feels different at first. The ego negotiates. The frugal part of the mind wonders if free advice might be enough. Yet once you have sat across from someone who has carried the weight you are about to lift, you feel what begins to happen in your chest. Your horizon lengthens, your threat response quiets, your choices move from reaction to design. The ancient picture of many voices in the planning room was never about ceremony, it was about leverage. There is a spiritual tenderness to true counsel. It is not a spotlight, it is a lamp held close to the next step. It names risks without drama and options without pressure. It protects your dignity while it sharpens your thinking. Something sacred happens when two minds look at the same decision and agree on the pattern it carries. The nervous system calls this co-regulation. The heart calls it relief. The mind calls it clarity. The body finally releases the breath it has been holding. Imagine a long table with maps laid open from edge to edge. Each map shows the same territory through a different lens. One lens speaks legal, one lens speaks taxes, one lens speaks operations, one lens speaks marketing, one lens speaks capital. Alone, each map offers a partial truth. Together, they reveal the shape of the terrain and the weather moving across it. Strategy stops being a guess. It becomes a conversation among lenses. The decision that once felt like a cliff becomes a path that bends but does not vanish. The greatest cost of isolation is not a single mistake. It is the compound effect of small misjudgments that pile up because there was no one to catch them early. Counsel interrupts that compounding. You still carry responsibility. You still lead. You still choose. The difference is that the load is shaped before it is lifted. Downside is contained before it becomes a headline in your private life. Chaos does not scale. Clarity does. Without counsel, growth multiplies confusion. With counsel, growth multiplies order. A gentle story unfolds in many builders who once prided themselves on being self-made. The first time they invite seasoned eyes into a pending move, shame flares for a moment. It sounds like this should be obvious. It feels like a bruise on identity. Then the advisor names a risk hidden in plain sight and suggests a cleaner route. Money is saved without fanfare. Months are saved without applause. The bruise fades. Respect grows. The next decision comes, and the room is not empty anymore. Emotional neuroscience gives language to why this matters. Stress narrows perception. Threat inflates immediate rewards and blurs delayed consequences. Under pressure, the brain reaches for shortcuts that once worked and repeats them past their usefulness. A wise advisor acts like an external prefrontal cortex, calm, pattern-focused, less dazzled by novelty, more loyal to principles that survive seasons. That calm is contagious. The body hears the tone and settles. The quality of judgment rises within minutes. Choices that would have fed tomorrow's fires never make it out of the room. Money notices these shifts. Decision time shortens because you are no longer alone with the echo. Error rate drops because trapdoors are sealed early. The business stops paying tuition to the university of avoidable mistakes. Relationships change as well. Counsel often arrives through living networks. A lawyer introduces an operator. A mentor introduces a partner. A strategist opens a conversation with a lender who trusts their word and, by extension, begins to trust yours. Opportunity grows from the roots of credibility rather than from the fumes of hustle. Over time, a rhythm of counsel forms that feels less like an event and more like a heartbeat, a strategic voice that looks far and keeps your compass honest. A technical voice that lives close to the craft and notices what your hands miss. The cadence is steady and unhurried. You are not chasing gurus across the internet. You are cultivating a small circle that learns your patterns and loves your outcomes. Meetings feel lighter because context is shared and drama is absent. Decisions speed up without feeling rushed. There is no performance in the room, only truth. The conversation about cost becomes simpler as the evidence accumulates. Fees stop looking like loss and start feeling like guardrails on a mountain road. The bills you no longer pay are invisible on a spreadsheet, yet your body can feel them. The quiet of a week without crisis, the margin that survives a launch, the focus that remains after a contract closes cleanly. This is a different kind of wealth. It is measured in money saved, time preserved, and peace kept. It is measured in how your family experiences you when the day ends. Pride loosens its grip in this environment. Receiving guidance does not shrink sovereignty, it strengthens it. A sovereign who listens becomes a leader others can trust. A builder who surrounds themselves with clear eyes becomes a steward who outlasts seasons. There is humility in that picture, but there is also power, not the loud kind, the enduring kind, the kind that does not need to announce victory because victory is planned before the first move. Let the image settle. You in a room that is no longer empty. Maps on the table. Voices you respect and records you trust. The noise of the world muted by the sound of steady minds thinking with you. The choice comes, and with it a quiet sense that you are not gambling. You are governing. Your advisors multiply what you carry. They do not replace your judgment. They refine it until it can bear greater weight without breaking. In that refinement, your wealth stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a structure that can hold a future. There is a quiet fear that wakes when income depends on one fragile thread, a single client, a single platform, a single employer. Even on the good days, the body does not fully relax because a single point of failure keeps humming like a low alarm in the background. The mind starts to bargain with luck. The heart scans for any sign of change. Sleep gets lighter, joy gets thinner. The soul knows what the spreadsheet hides. Concentration is comfort until it turns into risk. Enduring wealth does not grow from doing everything at once. Enduring wealth grows from building one clean engine and then letting that engine sponsor the next current. There is a humane sequence to it. First, the craft that pays with reliability, then a gentle layer that returns again and again, then a portion that is planted where time can multiply it without noise. The order matters because the nervous system reads chaos as danger. When the inner world senses too many moving parts too soon, it floods the body with caution. Focus fractures. Results stall. The sequence protects both cash flow and calm. Think of a river that begins as a narrow stream. It gathers strength, then branches into new channels that feed fields along the valley. No single channel carries the burden of the whole. If one runs low in a dry season, the valley still eats. That is the wisdom hidden in diversification. It is not a carnival of projects shouting over each other. It is a family of flows that share the same source and serve the same house. The spiritual heart of this idea is stewardship, not more for the sake of more so that more remains when the weather turns. There is a reason the ancient picture speaks of sending goods on many waters. Ships leave the same harbor at different times. One meets a storm. One meets a calm. One returns early with news, another arrives late with profit. The owner does not panic when a cloud gathers on the horizon. The owner has options. Options are the quiet currency of peace. Options are the invisible guardrails that keep a life from swerving when a market decides to test your balance. Options are how love is protected when the winds shift without warning. Emotional neuroscience gives the body a seat at this table. A life with one income source keeps the system braced. The amygdala grows jumpy. The stress response lingers past its usefulness. The prefrontal mind tires of constant vigilance and begins to make hurried choices. A life with layered streams shifts the chemistry. Threat signals soften. Planning centers wake up. Patience becomes affordable because survival is not on trial every Friday. The same person with the same values begins to choose with more dignity, simply because risk is spread and time is on their side. Sequencing is kindness disguised as strategy. It asks for patience at the start so strength can grow. It asks for clarity as the second stream is chosen so effort compounds rather than competes. It asks for devotion to a fixed share of surplus that will be planted rather than consumed. None of this is glamorous. All of it is sovereign. Over months, the first engine grows stable. Over more months, the second stream settles into its rhythm. Over still more months, the third destination begins to speak in the language of compounding. What once felt like a distant promise begins to show up in small, practical ways. Fewer spikes, fewer shocks, more months that end with a surplus that is ready to be placed where it can work without complaints. A softer identity emerges from this way of building. The builder who once flinched at every headline now reads with a steadier pulse. News becomes information rather than a verdict. Trends become optional rather than urgent. The soul remembers that prosperity is not a race against strangers. It is an arrangement of flows that reflect your design and your season. You do not need to be everywhere. You need to be rooted somewhere, and from there extend wisely. The tree teaches this without speaking. One trunk first, branches later, fruit in its time. There is also a social grace that grows in this terrain. People feel safer partnering with someone whose house is not held up by a single beam. Trust increases when the signals of desperation disappear. Negotiations soften when you are not forcing an outcome to save a month. Opportunities begin to come by invitation because reputation now includes the scent of endurance. The open hand from the last chapter begins to meet open doors in this one. Layered streams support generous moves without leaving the table empty. The math will tell its own story if given enough seasons. No single source dominates the whole. No single client decides your mood. A fixed portion of every month keeps flowing toward investments that do not need your voice to make more of what you place there. It is not flashy, it is deeply relieving. The body knows relief when it finds it. Shoulders lower, breath deepens. Planning becomes a conversation you look forward to rather than a courtroom you dread. Hold the image of the harbor at dusk, lanterns along the pier, crews loading quietly, several ships readying for night waters. You feel the old anxiety try to rise, then you notice the fleet. One vessel could be delayed, and the story would still end in provision. This is the sound of endurance. This is the feel of wisdom that has learned to move in more than one direction without losing its center. Diversify to endure, not to impress, not to chase. To rest inside a structure that lets you meet the future with a steady voice and a generous heart. There is a narrowness that enters the chest when resources feel scarce. It tightens the jaw. It shortens the breath. It whispers that every interaction is a transaction and every offer is a risk. In that narrowness, relationships shrink to their utility and opportunities begin to sense the tension and keep their distance. The mind believes it is protecting your future. The body believes it is surviving this week. The result is a life lived in defensive posture, where every door must be pried open and every conversation arrives already under suspicion. The cost is not only measured in money, it is measured in the erosion of ease and in the slow loss of relational warmth. There is another way that feels older and wiser. It begins with an open hand that gives value before it is asked for, and without a hidden invoice tucked beneath the smile. Not random giving, not performative giving, strategic giving that plants seeds in the soil where you actually live. A thoughtful introduction that saves someone months of searching. A brief insight that turns a costly mistake into a clean turn. A resource shared at the right moment that lets another builder exhale and move forward. The gesture is simple. The signal is profound. I am not here to extract, I am here to increase. That signal travels faster than any pitch and lingers longer than any ad. Emotional neuroscience explains why this posture changes outcomes. When generosity becomes part of your baseline rhythm, the nervous system relaxes because it stops treating every exchange as a threat to be managed. Safety spreads through the body like warm light. The social brain wakes and begins to notice nuance that stress once blurred. Trust chemicals rise. Defensive vigilance fades. You listen better. You read rooms more clearly. You choose partners with cleaner instincts. Your prefrontal mind, now less encumbered by scarcity alarms, starts designing instead of bargaining. What looks spiritual from one angle and ethical from another reveals a quiet edge in the marketplace. Calm people think better. Generous people are invited sooner. Honor has gravity. When you give in ways that respect the other person's time and dignity, your name carries a weight that marketing budgets cannot buy. Calls are returned, rooms open, people volunteer your name in conversations you did not know were happening. This is not magic, it is memory. Others remember how they felt when they were around you, respected, seen, unrushed. That memory becomes a bridge you can cross later without shouting. The old proverb about a gift-making room in the presence of power was never about flattery. It was about the doors that swing when hearts feel safe. There is a wise boundary wrapped inside this open hand. Strategic generosity is not self-abandonment. It is not saying yes to every ask or bleeding your calendar dry to earn favor you already possess. It is generosity married to judgment. It knows the difference between sowing and rescuing. It can bless without being used. It can give without enabling patterns that hurt both sides. This is why inner order comes first. When you are no longer proving your worth with work, you can give without needing to be seen as the hero. When you are rooted, you can be generous without becoming porous. Picture a quiet desk at the end of the week. A single page sits there. On it are a few names and a few lines that capture how value moved outward from your life. An introduction that led to a collaboration. A short note that lifted a heavy day for someone fighting a silent battle. A document shared that prevented a friend from reinventing a wheel you already built. No fanfare, only a record of seeds planted. Over time, the page begins to feel like a small garden you tend with intention. You can trace the way doors opened later, not by accident, but by the slow reciprocity that healthy communities practice without keeping score. Money notices this posture as well. Deals that once required pressure now arrive with ease because the other side does not feel ambushed. Negotiations soften because mutual gain is not a slogan but a habit. Risk decreases because your network rushes to warn you of bad fits and ushers in the right ones at the right time. You spend less on convincing and more on serving. You spend less on repair and more on refinement. The line on the chart begins to reflect the reduction of friction that generosity quietly delivers. There is a touch of sacredness in this way of building. To give before you ask is to affirm that you live in a world where goodness still multiplies. It is to declare that your source is larger than your pipeline and that your identity is deeper than your latest launch. That declaration steadies the soul. It makes patience possible. It allows you to protect long friendships during short storms and to maintain your honor when a faster strategy would have cost you something you cannot replace. The paradox becomes clear. Open hands do not lose power, they gain it. Power over fear, power over impulse, power to move with dignity when the room is tense and the stakes are high. Notice how your body responds when you imagine this as your normal. Shoulders loosen, eyes soften, the heart sits lower in the chest. The future feels less like a courtroom and more like a table where trusted people share what they have learned and pass the bread. In that room, you are not auditioning. You are contributing. In that room, you are not hustling for a place. You are building a place where others can breathe. That place has a way of bringing opportunities that fit who you are becoming instead of tempting you back into who you used to be. The mind will offer objection. What if others take advantage? What if I give and nothing returns? These are not foolish questions. They are the voice of an injured past trying to keep you safe. Let them be heard. Then let wisdom answer with steady clarity. Boundaries remain, discernment remains. You are not opening a vault to strangers. You are opening small doors where relationship and alignment already live. You are not gambling, you are gardening. Hold a final picture as this chapter settles. A corridor lined with doors and the soft light of morning spilling across the floor. Your hand is open, not empty, open. In that posture, you carry something worth sharing, and you share it without hurry. One door opens, then another, not all at once and not by force. The sequence feels guided. The timing feels kind. What returns to you is more than money. It is the kind of peace that lets you sleep deeply and the kind of reputation that greets you in rooms you have yet to enter. Open hand, open gates. The words land like a blessing and a blueprint at the same time. There is a tender relief that enters the room when effort finally arranges itself into a pattern your body can trust. The ache of improvisation eases. The scattered hours begin to gather. The voice inside that was always bracing starts to rest its shoulders. This is not another hustle. This is a humane order. It honors how a nervous system finds safety and how a mind finds clarity. It braids wisdom and diligence and counsel and endurance and honor into a single quiet rhythm that repeats kindly and pays interest in peace as well as provision. The day opens with a quiet hour before the world gets loud. A lamp, a page, a mind that chooses understanding before income. You read to sharpen judgment. You practice to strengthen a chosen skill. You reflect until yesterday's friction becomes today's clarity. The body recognizes this sanctuary and responds with steadier breath and softer eyes because it knows that wisdom comes first and that money works better when it follows. The arc of work settles into a simple cadence. Early hours carry a few high-leverage moves that actually move the needle for your craft or business. Later hours host a few gentle refinements that smooth the edges of what you built earlier. Inputs are noted as they happen with simple honesty. Outcomes are reviewed near week's end with calm attention. The drama fades because rhythm has taken its seat. The graph of your effort begins to look less like a storm and more like a season that knows when to rain and when to rest. Around your decision-making, a small circle formed. One seasoned voice that thinks far and protects your direction. One technical voice that lives close to the work and protects your execution. The cadence is unforced and regular, a conversation each month that adjusts the compass, a conversation every other week that tightens the craft. Pride loosens, relief grows. You remain the one who chooses. You are simply no longer choosing inside an echo. Income expands with patience that refuses chaos. One strong stream becomes steady enough to sponsor a second flow that returns again and again. From there, a regular share of surplus is planted in places where time and discipline can multiply it without constant touch. No single source dominates the story. Concentration risk falls to the ground. Options rise. Your planning centers wake up because survival is no longer on trial every Friday. The same values live inside a calmer chemistry and make cleaner choices. Honor moves quietly through the week like a warm current. Each week you make small deposits into the lives around you without performance and without keeping score. A thoughtful introduction that saves someone months. A clear insight that prevents an expensive mistake. A resource shared at the right moment that steadies a friend's hands. You keep a simple record so memory can see what your heart already knows. Seeds were planted. Trust was strengthened. Rooms began to open with ease because your name arrived carrying the scent of increase rather than extraction. Evidence accumulates. A page shows applied insights and avoided mistakes and smoother processes. Most days are kept rather than missed. Decisions take about half the time they used to, and they break less often. Income no longer leans on a single pillar. Fresh opportunities appear more often, and the quality of those invitations improves. The numbers will speak when needed, yet your body speaks first. Fewer spikes, fewer shocks, more steadiness that you can feel in your chest and hear in your home. What emerges is not a grind, it is a governance, a way of carrying your days that respects biology and invites grace. You are no longer bargaining with adrenaline, you are partnering with order. The hours stop rushing you, they begin to serve you. The plan is not loud because it does not need to announce itself. It simply repeats. It simply compounds. It turns wealth from a chase into a structure you can lean on without flinching. Hold the image of a room at dawn, a blueprint on the table, a chair that fits your back, a handful of tools set in their places. You enter without hurry because you know what comes first and what comes next. Wisdom, then work. Counsel, then scale. Many streams, then softer seasons. Open hand, then open gates. The rhythm does not shout, it hums. It hums until the walls stand straight and the roof keeps its promise, and the house you are building can shelter more than your fear. There is a hush that settles when the pieces of a life begin to agree with one another, when the inner order you have practiced meets the outer order you have arranged, and the two stop arguing in the dark. The breath finds its depth again. The jaw stops guarding the future. The mind, long trained to scan for threats, lifts its eyes and starts to recognize the horizon as a place for planting rather than a place for running. Wealth ceases to be a contest and becomes a conversation between who you are and what you are willing to steward with honor. Across these hours, a pattern revealed itself with the patience of a dawn. Understanding before opportunity, so judgment can do its quiet work. Steady rhythm before dramatic motion, so results can repeat without bruising the body. Shared wisdom before scale, so blind corners are lit and detours are brief. Many streams arranged in kind sequence, so seasons can change without stealing your sleep. An open hand moving through real relationships, so rooms remember your name with warmth instead of caution. The nervous system hears this and stands down. The spirit hears this and stands up. Think of the images that have gathered around you. The blueprint on a wooden table, whose lines removed guesswork before the first stone was lifted. The narrow path pressed into the earth by small, steady feet, carrying their grains until winter itself gave way. The long table of maps where calm eyes saw the same terrain and gave your choices a truer shape. The harbor at dusk, where more than one ship carried your hopes across changing waters without asking you to gamble your peace. The open gate that recognized an open hand and swung without noise. Each image points to the same center: order that protects, wisdom that builds, generosity that multiplies what it touches. There is a softer definition of wealth that begins to take root here. Not just surplus counted at the end of a month, but surplus of clarity at the start of a day. Not just an account that can carry your bills, but a character that can carry your influence. Not just the ability to purchase what you want, but the freedom to refuse what does not fit your calling. The ledger matters and will keep telling its story as the years unfold, yet the deeper story is written in how you move through a morning, how you make a promise, how you hold power without needing to perform for it. If there is a residue of doubt, let it meet a quiet truth. You do not have to become someone else to live this way. You are returning to a wiser sequence that your body already knows and your spirit already trusts. When wisdom leads, money follows with less noise. When rhythm steadies, results lengthen their roots. When counsel surrounds, choices become lighter without losing their weight. When income is layered, hope grows patient. When honor moves first, doors remember. As the final light settles across the room, allow one question to rest with you like a companion rather than a demand. What changes in you and around you when your wealth is no longer a chase, but a house built on wisdom that keeps its promise?